They say a good fence makes good neighbors. But when my fence triggered a full-blown police investigation and exposed a criminal empire disguised as an HOA, I knew this was war. My name's David Lawson. I'm 42, a software engineer who works remotely, and when I bought my home on Willow Ridge Drive 3 years ago, I thought I'd found peace. My house stood proudly outside the borders of the Ridgepoint Meadows HOA, a fact I confirmed with my agent, a real estate attorney, and even the county clerk. Then came Linda Harper. She'd ruled Ridgepoint Meadows HOA for nearly a decade, immaculately dressed, obsessed with power, and feared like a local tyrant. With her clipboard, camera, and calculator always on hand, she ran the neighborhood like a tight-fisted regime. When she found out my home fell outside her grasp, she made it her mission to fix that error. It began with neighborly comments. Linda would wave at me and mention how my hedge threatened the neighborhood uniformity. She brought over cupcakes and noted my house color clashed with the homes on her block. I'd smile and remind her, gently, that I wasn't under her HOA. Her smile never reached her eyes. Soon after, the real fun started. First came a complaint to the health department. I was allegedly running a commercial kitchen. My offense: a backyard barbecue with friends. The inspector chuckled when he saw my charcoal grill. Then animal control showed up. Apparently, I was housing illegal pets. The crime: 2 koi fish in a decorative pond. After that came a fire marshal. Someone had called in a report of dangerous chemical storage. The chemicals turned out to be leftover paint cans. By the time the EPA got involved over accusations of toxic dumping, which was just organic fertilizer, even the local officers began treating it like a comedy routine. Officer Martinez admitted they had a betting pool going about what Linda would accuse me of next. Still, I tried diplomacy. I invited her for coffee. She arrived with a notepad and voice recorder, launching into a 40-minute lecture on declining neighborhood aesthetics. When I showed her housing market trends showing rising values, she scoffed and accused me of forging data. She stormed out after I refused to join her HOA, or pay dues I never owed. Things turned ugly after I installed a small wooden fence. Within an hour, Linda had called the police, citing illegal construction. My permits were all in order, but she insisted they were invalid, and tried to accuse me of fraud. Then came the camera incident. I installed a single outdoor security cam. She claimed I was spying on the neighborhood. When the police arrived, she'd brought 3 HOA board members with matching pins to back her up. They dramatically pointed to my camera, even though it only covered my own driveway. But the tipping point came with what she labeled the shed situation. I ordered a basic storage shed for my tools. The moment it arrived, so did the sirens. Linda had reported an illegal housing structure under construction. She filed a complaint with the zoning board and submitted photos taken from her upstairs window, through a telephoto lens. Linda wasn't finished. She hosted an emergency community briefing in the HOA hall, complete with a PowerPoint titled, "The Willow Ridge Threat." Jake, my buddy from down the road who lived in the HOA, attended, and filmed the whole thing. It featured 40 slides of my property, red arrows, and graphs claiming I was tanking property values with fake metrics. At this point, the police were coming by so often that Officer Martinez started bringing me coupons for local coffee shops. Dispatch had given Linda's reports a special code, Code Harper. The final straw: she called in a report accusing me of running a meth lab, all because steam came from my bathroom window one morning while I showered. That's when I hired Sarah Donovan, a sharp-as-nails property rights attorney who'd taken on abusive HOAs before. Sarah filed a harassment cease and desist. But while digging through Ridgepoint HOA's public filings, she unearthed something massive. Linda had illegally extended the HOA boundary on paper, forging signatures on official amendments. She'd been collecting dues from over a dozen homes that weren't technically part of the HOA. My elderly neighbors, the Morgans, had paid $180 a month for 3 years, completely unaware. The plan: to slowly rope my property into her fiefdom and then hit me with fines until I gave in. But there was more. Sarah found records showing Linda had funneled over $9,000 in HOA funds into what she called neighborhood defense operations. What did that include? Hiring a drone pilot to fly over my house, purchasing surveillance cameras and long-range lenses, paying a private investigator to follow me, all buried in HOA budgets under vague categories like security enhancement. We also found fake Facebook profiles Linda used to post photos of my house with captions like "eyesore on Willow" and the invasion begins. She ran a blog titled, Save Ridgepoint, with countdowns to when my property would allegedly cause economic collapse. The PI she hired eventually came forward. He admitted he'd followed me to doctor's appointments and even family gatherings. He tried to quit, but Linda threatened legal action. When we subpoenaed HOA records, we found Linda had a locked cabinet with files on over 200 households, photos, notes, even utility data she had no right to possess. My file alone was 3 inches thick. We took it to the media. The local paper ran the headline, HOA president under fire for fraud and surveillance. Suddenly, neighbors who'd stayed silent came forward. Fines for trash bins out too long. Threats over fence colors. Even kids' chalk drawings labeled as graffiti. The HOA held an emergency meeting. It was packed. Linda sat at the board table, but her usual poise cracked as member after member stood up and told their stories. When a forensic accountant revealed the embezzled funds and misused resources, the room erupted. Even her closest allies turned on her. The vote to remove her was unanimous. But it didn't stop there. The Attorney General's office launched a criminal investigation. Linda was indicted on 14 counts of fraud and forgery, plus misuse of funds. The total damages, over $175,000. In court, as the charges were read aloud, she sat pale and speechless. Her lawyer tried to plead down, but the evidence was overwhelming. 6 months later, she stood for sentencing. The judge, unimpressed by her tears, stated, "You used power not to protect a community, but to punish it." She received 18 months in prison and was ordered to pay restitution. Her house was sold to cover the debt. As the bailiff handcuffed her, she looked at me one last time. Gone was the smug smile, the clipboard, the power. All that remained was disbelief. And for the first time in years, peace returned to Willow Ridge Drive.